I sure miss you guys. We are going to start Shut the Door speech, and I'm going to go through each of the texts. And when we do that, we're going to use our reading strategies. Earlier, you should have watched the video before this, the one that says thieves on it. And that's the strategy that we're going to use. I'm going to go back and forth between those two pieces of paper. Not only will I read it, but I want you to be following along and doing the strategies yourself. Now, two things you can do. One, you can take and print it if you have a printer at home so that you can put the paper down and actually be writing on it just like how I'm writing when we go to under the camera. The other thing you can do is you can copy and paste on a Word document so that you have the ability to highlight. In Google Classroom, I don't think that it gives you the option to immediately highlight the text. And so just trying to give you some ideas so that you can follow along using the same strategies that I'm going to be showing you as well. Now, at any time, you can take and pause so that you can get yourself square and then just come back in and join the meeting because this is being recorded. So you'll have the option to replay as many times. Also, you should have read the first introduction stating the times that we will go live. In every class, I have where I will be live, and you can just send a request, and I'll put that out there on Google Classroom. You can pop in. And for novels, those all have times, and so we're going to honor those twice a week. In that time, you can be asking questions. We're going to have a discussion board and all that good stuff, okay? So I'm excited. Let's go ahead and get started with Shut the Door speech. All right. If you remember, let me just plug into the hover cam. You should be able to see me, but I'm going to go under the camera and work that way. Give me a second here. Okay. So if you remember with thieves, when we had gone through this, we first talked about, for a pre-reading strategy, the title. So if I do that with Shut the Door, the speech, the title. So I've got Shut the Door. Take this paper clip off. And it's a speech. So let's write down the things that we know. Okay, right away, I know that is a speech is something that we deliver to an audience. Now, when we deliver it to an audience, we have an intended purpose, okay? We're going to determine what that purpose is here in just a little bit. Shut the door. Let's think about that for a second. Shut means to close, and a door is sectioning two things, whether it's a room or a trap, but it's sectioning something from something else. Okay, so we've got our title done. We have the H for headings. So let's take a look and see if we see any headings. As I'm looking, I am going through, and you'll notice between the paragraphs, there isn't actually any other headings in this. So we don't have any headings. Let's look. We have an introduction, though, which is right up here at the top. Okay. And in the introduction, in the early 20th century, there was an influx of immigrants to the United States. The Quota Act of 1921 and the Act of 1924 prohibited the amount of immigrants allowed into the country, the latter more restrictive than the former. In the following speech delivered to Congress on April 9th, 1929, Senator Ellison Durant Smith of South Carolina argues that in order to preserve American resources, the government should restrict immigration. Although his argument is now largely considered racist, the Act of 1924 was instated with only 6 dissenting votes. As you read, analyze the points Smith makes to justify his argument. So we have a little bit of background information about what Smith is going to tell us in his speech. Okay? Let's go back. So we have the introduction. We're going to highlight every first sentence. So let's do that. Okay, I've highlighted that first one. I'm going to go down to the second paragraph, and I'm going to highlight there as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the top of the next one. And then I'm going to move down. And the fifth paragraph. Okay. And you'll notice these other ones didn't have a number on them. So I'm just going to put a number by my paragraphs to help keep it organized a little bit. So I've got a 3, 4, and a 5. And then I've got 6, 7, 8, 9, and then there's 10. So let's keep highlighting that first sentence. One of the other neat things about when we're reading is we can see the craftsmanship of how the words are used to make an impact on the reader. We are going to be going back to our writing that we had started. And so this is going to just be some neat examples. I know I always like to see other people's ideas as well. All right, down here at the bottom. Okay, and what number should I highlight this one as? You said 11, you're right, because they're going in order as I come down. And then on that last page, page 4, there actually is no text. Okay, we're going to come back and I'm going to label that as paragraph 2, and then it started at 3 on that next one. Okay, so we've got every first sentence done. Now we're going to look at our visuals and any vocab that's in the text. All right, so I know that I do have a visual right here. And it says underneath this that Ellis Island, 1902, by unknown, is in public domain. So this is a picture of Ellis Island and some of the Americans that were there. And that's our only picture as I go back through and look at the text. And I didn't see any words that were automatically brought out as highlighting. But I do see down here that I've got some vocab. So this first one, you'll notice that there's a little 1 that's right, encroach. So to encroach, to intrude on, to disturb. Okay. Number 2, I have exploit. And then I have inertia and assimilate. I found one right here and then exploit right up here at the top. So paragraph 3, line 3 in the middle is exploit. And you'll see that it's got that little number 2. Okay, inertia right there with the third line up, paragraph 3. And then 4, assimilate, to conform to the customer's attitudes. These are down at the bottom. Okay, so make sure you review those. And then I've got a 5 and a 6. So let's look for those as well. Okay, 5. Zertrum, something that's in need or wanted. And then number 6 is down here, and I'm going to box that one as well. Means that it is already in something skein, a length of thread or yarn. Skein. Okay, so there's my vocab all set up. And of course, as a reader, there might be other words that I'll want to take and highlight and find the meaning. And then I'll just, down here at the bottom, I'll put any other vocab words that I find. Okay. All right, so that takes care of our V, visuals, and vocab. Now we're going to look at our ending questions. These are going to be the ones that we're going to think of before we get all the way done. Remember, we said that there's 2 kinds of ending questions. The one that the author wants to make sure that we comprehend and we understand. Those are the ending questions that we're answering. But then there's also thought-provoking ending questions that I, as a reader, might want to ask. Maybe it's because I'm confused about something. Maybe I want to know more about it. There could be several reasons why we would ask ending questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my text aside, and I'm going to use, if you print it out, it would be your page 4, because it just happens to be a blank page, mostly a blank page. So I'm going to write beginning, middle, and end. And here is where I'm going to be putting my summary, my, about a sentence or 2 summary to add to my paragraph summary. Okay, let's look at our questions. So, first one, which of the following best describes a central idea of the text? So as a good reader, I want to think about what that academic vocabulary is in there that is what I'm really supposed to be looking for. And so I'll notice right away, central idea. And what do I want to know about the central idea? I want to know what best describes. So in my chart, I can put what is the central idea. What's another word for central idea? What do you think that the word central means? Central has the root word center. So we're going to be thinking about a main idea in here. So here's my question, and then there's going to be my answer to this question. Okay? Let's look at number 2. Which of the following quotes best supports the answer to part A? So part A is going to be this one up here, the central idea, and it flows to this question. So we want to know which of the following quotes best supports the answer. Okay, so I'm going to highlight quotes best supports part A. So we really have to know A in order to get number 2. All right, let's look at number 3. And you'll notice I didn't go to my chart on that one because the quote is going to be tied to what I first answered with number 1. So number 3, in paragraph 2, how does the senator justify his position that underdeveloped land should not be used to sustain the life of immigrants? Okay, what is that really asking me? First of all, I need to go to paragraph 2, and we're going to justify that the land should not be used to sustain life of immigrants. So justify land not being used to sustain immigrants. Okay, so how could I put that into a question? Okay, I could put why or what does the senator say or give for reasons to, what are we looking for? Not sustain life. Oop. And I put sustain life of immigrants on there. Okay, so again, once I find that, I'm going to put my answer here, and this is going to be in paragraph 2. So I can also go to my reading, and I can put big Q here. I've got a question, okay? And so we want to know why in there. Okay. All right, and let's continue on and look at our next question. All right. Consider the senator's word choice in reference to non-white people. What is the effect of the word choice? So we want to look at the effect of the word choice of which one? The reference to non-white people. So why does the senator use the words, and look at it again, non-white people? So right away, start thinking, what does non-white people mean? Well, non means not. So not white people. So what population would that be? Okay, we need to think about that, and then we're going to put our answer over here. Okay, because as we're reading, this is going to be in my classroom, we do middle or during the reading. How are we discovering our answer? What are we finding? Okay. And number 5, which of the following quotes best supports the answer to A? So again, I have to find my answer here to be able to know what my answer is going to be here, because I want the quote that supports part A, which is going to be right here. Okay, so I don't have anything I need to add into my chart at this time. So I've got my chart started. And as I read, I'm going to fill this out the best that I can, and I'm going to come back and look at it. Now, if I go to thieves, I don't need to do a summary yet, right? Because this is not a summary, is for after reading, not a pre-reading strategy. So let's begin to look at this. So I have my title, Shut the Door Speech. We've read this introduction. Let's read all of the first lines of each paragraph. And I'm going to start that if you will follow along with me. It seems to me the point as to this measure, and I have been so impressed for several years, is that the time has arrived when we should shut the door. I think that we have significant stock in America now for us to shut the door, Americanize what we have, and save the resources for America for the natural increase of our population. I do not believe that political resources should enter into the discussion of what this very vital question. I think we now have sufficient population in our country for us to shut the door and to breed up a pure, unadulterated American citizenship. Without offense, but with the regard to salvation of our own, let us shut the door and assimilate what we have, and let us breed pure American citizens and develop our own American resources. The great dispersion of modern times has been education, not alone book knowledge, but that education which enables men to think right, to think logically, to think truthfully, men equipped with power to appreciate the rapidly developing conditions that are about us, that we have converted the world in the last 50 years into the brand new world and made us masters to force that our revelizing production. We are struggling today against the organized forces of the man's brain, multiplied 1,000,000 times by materialized thought in the form of steam and electricity as applied in the everyday affairs of man. We ought to Americanize not only our population, but our forces. We ought to Americanize, next paragraph. The senator from Georgia, Mr. Harris, has introduced an amendment to shut the door. We do not want to tangle the skein of Americans' progress by those who have imperfectly understand the genius of our government and the opportunities that lie about us. I am more concerned about that I am whether a new railroad shall be built or where there shall be diversified farming next year or a certain coal mine shall be mined. Okay, so there's where we're at. As I start to read that, I'm already thinking about some ideas of what I think that it really means to shut the door. And they're talking about revitalization. So what do you think that shut the door means now? What are they shutting? Okay, I'm going to have a question up there. You put your answer right here. What do you think? Give me a minute to get caught up, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to start reading the entire passage. Okay, so you remember I said that a good reader reads 3 times for all texts. And so we've gone through one time with pre-reading. We've gone through with the first sentence, looking at it. So now we're going to go back and start reading the text from the very front paragraph to the back paragraph. In the early 20th century, there was an influx of immigration to the United States. The Quota Act of 1921 and the Act of 1924 prohibited the amount of immigrants allowed into the country, the latter more restrictive than the former. In the following speech delivered to Congress on April 9, 1924, Senator Ellison Durant Smith of South Carolina argues that in order to preserve America's resources, the government should restrict immigration. Although his argument is now largely considered racist, the Act of 1924 was instated with only 6 dissenting votes. As you read, analyze the points Smith makes to justify his argument. So what are they shutting? It's the borders from immigration. And we're going to look at the points that Smith makes to justify his entire argument. So paragraph 1. It seems to me at this point, as to this measure, and I have been so impressed for several years, is that the time has arrived when we should shut the door. We have been called the melting pot of the world. We have an experience just a few years ago during the Great World War when it looked as though we had allowed influences to enter our borders that were about to melt the pot in place of us being the melting pot. So what can I say that is the main topic right here? Well, you could put that we were known as the melting pot, and something about maybe up here, time to shut borders. Okay, 2 key ideas. Give you a moment to write that down. Time to shut borders, known as the melting pot. I think that we have sufficient stock in America now for us to shut the door. Americanize what we have and save the resources of America for the natural increase of our population. We all know that one of the most prolific causes of war is the desire for increased land ownership for the overflow of a congested population. We are increasing at such a rate that it is natural course of things in a comparatively few years that the landed resources, the natural resources of the country, shall be taken up by the natural increase of our population. It seems to me that part of the wisdom now we have throughout the length and the breadth of continual American population, which is beginning to encroach upon the reserve and virgin resources of the country, to keep it in trust for the multiplying population of the country. Okay. Now remember, we have the question over here, why? Okay, and our question was, why does Senator say or give reasons to not sustain life of the immigrants? What does he think that we already have enough of? If you said that the natural resources of the country shall be taken up by the natural increase of the population, that's why he's saying that we need to shut the borders. So we need to shut the door or borders so that the resources are not used up. Now, this answer I do want to put in my chart. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I know it seems like a lot of work sometimes, but then our answers should line up with our choices that we have. Okay, so why does the senator say or give reasons to not sustain life of immigrants? That our resources will become used up. Okay, now this just happened to be a relatively statement, but you don't have to have capitalization and punctuation in your chart. You can just freehand write, okay? All right, let's continue on. Paragraph 3. I do not believe that the political reason should enter into the discussion of this very vital question. It is of greater concern to us to maintain the institutions of America, to maintain the principles upon which this government is founded, than to develop and exploit the underdeveloped resources of the country. There are some things that are dear to us, fraught with more benefit to us than immediate development of the underdevelopment resources of the country. I believe that our particular ideals, social, moral, religious, and political, have demonstrated by virtue of the progress we have made with the character of people that we are, that we have the highest ideal of what the member of human family or nation. We have demonstrated the fact that the human family, certainly the predominant breed in America, can govern themselves by a direct government of the people. If this government shall fail, it shall fail by virtue of the terrible law of an inherited tendency. Those who come from nations from which time immemorial have been under the dictation of a master fall more easily by the law of inheritance and the inertia of habit into condition of political servitude, that the descendants of those who cleared the forest, conquered the savage, stood at arms, and won their liberty from their mother country, England. So let's think about that. What do you think that that paragraph is really telling us? If you said that we want to be true to America and we want to be true to the ideals that we have, you are probably in the right line. We don't want to take on dictation from other countries. That was part of why we wanted to break free. So wanting to be free and show progress. Okay. Number 4. I think we now have sufficient population in our country for us to shut the door and to breed up a pure, unadulterated American citizenship. I recognize that there is a danger, a lack of distinction between people of a certain nationality in the breed of a dog. Who is an American? Is he an immigrant from Italy? Is he an immigrant from Germany? If you were to go abroad and someone were to meet you and say, I met a typical American, what would flash into your mind as a typical American? The typical representative of that new nation. Would it be a son of an Italian immigrant, the son of a German immigrant, the son of the breeds from the Orient, the son of the Dezens of Africa? We must not get our ethological distinctions mixed up with our anthropological distinctions. It is the breed of a dog in which I'm interested. I would like for the members of the Senate to read the book just recently published by Madison Grant, The Passing of a Great Race. Thank God we have in America perhaps the largest percentage of any country in the world of the pure, unadulterated Anglo-Saxon stock, certainly the greatest of any nation in the Nordic breed. It is the preservation of the splendid stock that characterized us that I would make this as an asylum for the oppressed of all countries, but a country to assimilate and perfect the splendid type of manhood that has made America the foremost nation in her progress and in her power, and yet the youngest of all the nations. I myself believe that the preservation of her institutions depend upon us now taking counsel with our conditions and our experience during the last World War. So when we look at that paragraph, what are they comparing us to? Let's think about that first. They compared us to a breed, right? And then what does an American look like? Now, I put that as a question because they want you to think a little bit. What do Americans look like? What is the son of an American? Is that Italian? Is it Greek? Is it German? Is it Oriental? Is it Mexican? The Anglo-Saxon is really truly the mix of all. But what does America look like? And that's something for you to think about, because he's posing so that we don't look at a person, but we realize that we have enough people here. And when he's saying, let's breed up the stock, he's saying, let's not have this outside influence anymore. Let's just keep what's pure and what's working well right here in the United States. All right, let's keep going on to number 5. Without offense, but with the regard to the salvation of our own, let us shut the door and assimilate what we have, and let us breed pure American citizens and develop our own American resources. I am more in favor of that than I am of the quota propositions. Of course, it may not meet the prohibition of the senator that we shall shut the door, which I unqualifiedly and unreservedly believe to our duty, and develop that we have, assimilate and digest what we have into pure Americans, with American aspirations, and thoroughly familiar with the love of American institutions, rather than the importance of a number of men from other countries. If we may not have that, then I am in favor of putting the quota down to the lowest possible point, with every selective element in it that may be. And so what are we thinking would be a good central idea of that paragraph? Okay, are they wanting to develop what we have as Americans? And there they're referring to the people and to the land and the resources. Seeing that we are enough just as we are. And throughout the reading as we're going, we want to keep looking back. What's the central idea? Well, we have some ideas yet, but we need to keep looking. Why does the senator use the words non-white people? Have we gotten to that at all? No. So we need to keep thinking about those two. All right, paragraph 6. The great dissertation of the modern times has been education, not alone book knowledge, but that education may enables men to think right, to think logically, to think truthfully, men equipped with the power to appreciate the rapidly developing conditions that are about us, that we have converted the world in the last 50 years into a brand new world and made us masters of forces that are revolutionizing production. We want men, not like dumb, driven cattle from those nations where the progressive thought of the time was sacredly made a beginning and where they see men as mere machines. We want men who have an appreciation of the responsibility brought about by the manifestation of the power of that individual. We have not that in this country today. We have men here today who are selfishly utilizing the enormous forces discovered by genius, and if not by carefully as statesmen. If we are not careful in our legislation, these very masters of this tremendous force that have been made available to us bring us under their domination and control of virtue of the power they have in multiplying their wealth. So what is he saying about education? Okay, education. Use it wisely versus dominating. And he's telling us, which is interesting right now in these times, to not allow somebody to start dominating and control by virtue of power that they have multiplying their wealth. Oftentimes, the rich are the ones that are dictating to us. As we go forward and we're thinking about issues in American history, there's been one group that thought that they could dominate somebody else. And that was exactly what they didn't want to see happen for the early Americans. Let's continue on with paragraph 7. We are struggling today against the organized forces of man's brain, multiplied 1,000,000 times by materialized thought in the form of steam and electricity as applied to the everyday affairs of man. We have enough in this country to engage the brain of every lover of his country in solving the problems of a democratic government in the midst of the imperial power that genius is discovering and placing in the hands of man. We have population enough today without throwing wide our doors and jeopardizing the interests of the country by pouring into men who willingly become the slaves of those who implore them and manipulating those forces of nature. And they few reap the enormous benefits that accurate their form. Okay, so what are we struggling against? Organized what? Forces. So struggle against organized forces. Be yourself. Number 8. We ought to Americanize not only our population, but our forces. We ought to Americanize our factories, but our vast material resources so that we can each contribute to the other and have an abundance for us under the form of the government laid down before our fathers. So the whole mere fact of is share, right? 9. The senator from Georgia, Mr. Harris, has introduced an amendment to shut the door. It is not a question of politics. It's a question of maintaining that which has been made you and me the beneficiaries of the greatest hope that ever burned in the human breast for the most splendid future that ever stood before mankind, where the boy in the gutter can look with confidence in the seat of presidency of the United States, where the boy in the gutter can look forward to the time when, paying the price of a proper citizen, he may fill a seat in this hall, where the boy today, poverty-stricken, standing in the midst of all splendid opportunities of America, shall have, and please God, if we do our duty, we'll have an opportunity to enjoy the marvelous wealth that the genius and the brain of our country is making possible for us all. So everyone can be successful. And I hope you all know that about yourselves. It doesn't matter where you come from. You all have a brain and you need to continue to use it. And he's saying that no matter who you are, no matter what side of the street you come on, what city you come from, mom, dad, grandparents, that you have the wealth within inside of you because you are an American, that you will be successful. So everyone can be successful. We do not want to tangle the skein of Americans' progress by those who imperfectly understand the genius of our government and the opportunities that lie about us. Let us keep what we have, protect what we have, make what we have the realization of the dream of those who wrote the Constitution. Who was it that wrote the Constitution? We call those our four what? Fathers. And so I'm going to put a little like light bulb here. I know you all love when I do stick people, but it's the thought of our forefathers. I am more concerned about the man that I am, about whether a new railroad shall be built, or whether there shall be diversified farming next year, or whether a certain coal mine shall be mined. I would rather see American citizenship redefined to the last degree in all that America, what we hope it will be to develop the resources of America at the expense of the citizenships of our country. The time has come that we shall shut the door and keep what we have for what we hope our own people to be. So what is it that he's saying that, what can we infer from that last one? He wants us all to do what? Right here. Have hope, to prosper. And he's saying that we can't do that if we let everybody keep coming in. Okay? All right, so that concludes our pages. Let's look at our questions. So what's the central idea? What do you think that the central idea of the text is? I want you to think about that for a second. You probably want to put something to the effect that we want Americans to prosper and therefore stop immigration so that we can perfect ourselves and resources. Okay. Give me a minute to catch that up. All right, down at the bottom, why does the senator use the words non-white people? What is he referring to when he says that? You might add in here that we're a melting pot. And it's the blending of what America was first founded upon. Okay, I'm gonna pause real quick. I want you to look at your questions. And when you do so, then we're gonna come back and we're going to look at them together. When you go through your questions, okay, and you're coming and you're looking, I want you to look at the best answers and why do you like them? Why do you not like them? You're going to make those little notes out here in the side. Today, the focus really was about using thieves and annotating and showing you an example. And now I want you to go through and look at those questions so that you can discover the best answer. So I'm going to go through the first one with how we can use thieves in our annotating, and then you're going to do the rest of them. So in part A, the first question was, which of the following best describes a central idea of the text? Well, when we wrote down part of our answer, we wrote that we want Americans to prosper, therefore stop immigration so that we can perfect ourselves and our resources. Okay, so let's find something that's going to be to that. So could it be A, America has not always been accepting of immigrants due to fear of invasion? B, technically all Americans except the Indonesia's Native Americans are immigrants? C, Senator Ellison Durant Smith, among others, believed that one of the ways to improve America's prosperity was to strictly regulate and decrease immigration? Or D, immigration is as much an issue in the early 1900s as it is today? Did it reference about today? And we need to think about that. Did it keep coming back to today that we still have issues with immigration? We know that being logical thinkers, that we know that it could, but this again was written when? 1924. Okay, so we know that today is going to be what rules out D. America has not always been accepting of immigrants due to fear of invasion. Were we a fear of them invading us? Okay, that was part of what it was, right? Is being invaded, but it was about using up the resources. So invasion, that might not really be the best. Technically, all Americans except the Indonesian Native Americans are immigrants. Okay, that is true, but was that the main idea? Okay, did we have that we want Americans to prosper, therefore stop immigration so that we can perfect ourselves and our resources? Not really. Okay. Senator Ellison Durant Smith, among others, believed that one of the ways to improve America's prosperity was to strictly regulate and decrease immigration. They want Americans to prosper, and one way was to keep it so that we were pure. So when I look at these, I didn't really like invasion. I didn't like this one, but this one does match with what I was saying in my chart. Remember, when you do a chart like this, you're not going to lie to yourself. So when you come up with an answer, we haven't looked at our answer choices, so we know that we actually have a really good answer right here. It might not be the exact wording, so that's why we still need to be a thinker. So for number one, it's C, and you'll see how I went through them. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let you work on number 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, you do those. There are some discussion questions at the end of this, and those we're going to work with at the end of the week. Coming back, you're going to want to go through Ms. Johnson's presentation. She's put together a Prezi on apes, a good review of how you can read the question, answer the question, in with your answer, and then you'll complete that as well. Now, if you have questions, make sure you log on during the times that are available. Those are posted in an email for the week when I'll be available, and we can go live and we can go through any one of the additional questions. All right. Otherwise, take an email, all of your answers, put it on a Word doc or a Google Doc, and send it to your teachers. Have a great day and enjoy finishing the questions. Thank you for reading along and taking notes with me.